Testing 1, 2. Can you guys hear me now? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Perfect. Something happened with my microphone, so I'll take this back now. Now you guys can hear me, hopefully. Perfect. A little bit of technical difficulties there. We had to switch our streaming software back from our old one that we used last night. So thank you guys for letting me know in the comments. We are going to restart completely, kind of reset here. I'm Chief Meteorologist Joe Fritzma here on this Thursday evening, April 17th, 2025. We have a severe weather risk moving in for your morning hours tomorrow, and also tomorrow evening potentially. So we're going to go over that right now by starting out with the Storm Prediction Center outlook, which is the first thing I was getting to when my mic was muted here. So bear with me here. Slight risk in effect for pretty much all of West Michigan and Southwest Michigan there. With the timing being a little bit later tomorrow night, that slight risk has been kind of trimmed from the eastern part of the state. Again, this is the SBC's map, so our map is a little bit different from theirs. And they have marginal risk all the way up there towards Emmett County and Sheboygan there in northern lower Michigan. You also have portions of Menominee County in the UP, also in a marginal risk for severe weather tomorrow. Going hazard by hazard over the map, it's a low-end tornado risk. A lot of what's going to happen tomorrow is going to be kind of hinged on that damaging wind and your hail risk, as you can see here, both 15% probabilities across the state. So we have to kind of dive into the radar here, which we're going to go over the HRRR run. We're going to pretty much just kind of hone in on the HRRR run because it's kind of done a really good job in displaying the actual real-time temperatures tomorrow so what's actually going to happen in the atmosphere. Begin temperatures tomorrow are likely to be close to 80 degrees in some spots, south of 94, mid-70s all the way up towards Grand Rapids, Lansing, and over towards Port Huron. So we'll start off with shear lift, instability, moisture. Instead of looking at shear, we're going to go look at our storm relative helicity, which is basically the same thing, so our measurement of spin in the atmosphere for tomorrow. You can see in the morning, so this is about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, not a whole lot going on out there in terms of spin, but you get into the evening hours, and right where you see those reds and whites across the area, those are some higher values, especially along the warm front there that's supposed to move in for the evening hours, especially again along the US 10 corridor. And then as we move into the overnight hours, some of the storm relative helicity does pick up on the back side of things, so we do have plenty of that out there for spin out there tomorrow. We're also going to go switch over to the NAM-NST to look at our lifted indices here. I might have to go over to the pivotal weather here if I can find it. Should have it on here. They don't. They did. I know it's somewhere in here, but given the fact that we have a warm front and a cold front there tomorrow across the portions of the state, lifted indices are pretty large. When I clicked on a sounding earlier, the value for a lifted indice is -7. We need anything higher than or anything lower than a -5 for ample lift out there for severe weather to occur. So we have shear, we have lift. Now we get to switch over to our instability parameters, which is measured by surface-based CAPE. We switch it back to our 18Z HRRR run here, and you can see that a lot of our surface-based CAPE, again, not around in the morning. A lot of the storms that do occur in the morning will be elevated, so not a tornado. There's going to be no tornado risk in the morning, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. When we get into the afternoon hours, though, you can see our instability really kind of starts to ramp up here. We're looking for values over 1,000 joules, and right now we're seeing values closer to 2,000 joules. Anywhere you see those green pockets there along the 96 corridor from Grand Rapids over towards Flint, Tri-Cities region. However, you'll notice that there's a lot of these diagonal lines on there, and those diagonal lines are actually the capping inversion. So that capping inversion is going to basically act as a lid on the atmosphere. You've probably heard it mentioned a couple times in the last couple of days here at MSC. Again, you can have all the ingredients there possible, which in tomorrow's case we do. As you can see here, a lot of instability out there, well over 1,000 joules per kilogram. And then that kind of sticks around, that reservoir of instability sticks around into the evening hours and the cold front moves through. But again, it won't matter if the capping inversion is there. So we'll also switch over to our moisture, which is going to be our surface-based dew point temperatures. We're looking for dew point temperatures pretty much anywhere above 60 degrees tomorrow, anywhere indicated in the blue. And you can see there's a lot of higher dew point values, especially where it pools along the warm front there. Right now, the warm front is projected to be along 96. Could be varied a little bit north and south by about 30 to 50 miles. So still kind of honing in on how far north that warm front is going to get. But it is expected to be pretty much halfway through the entire lower peninsula. And those dew points eventually spread out by Saturday morning around 6 a.m. So it still remains rather moist overnight into the Saturday morning hours. So plenty of moisture out there. Already went over instability, plenty of lift, plenty of shear. So that being said, we have all four main ingredients for severe weather tomorrow, which is why we've been mentioning an all hazards risk. So with that being said, we'll switch it back over to our HRRR on Pivotal here. And you can kind of go through a loop of projected radar for perhaps what's supposed to happen tomorrow. Again, what you see here is just a projection, an estimate of what cells will look like throughout the day tomorrow. It's not what's actually going to happen, but it gives you a good idea of where the most intense storms will be in what area. You can see this is around 6 a.m. in the morning. A little bit of a linear segment kind of forms off the lake there over by Muskegon, moves through central Michigan and portions of the capital cities region. Turns into a little bit of a broken cluster there as the capping inversion kind of comes into play, and eventually moves over to Detroit by the 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour. You could also have a couple renegade cells move through in the afternoon, which are actually brand new that are just popping up now. So don't be surprised if an isolated cell or two does pop up tomorrow in the afternoon hours. You also see that there's a couple cells up there by Traverse City, Gaylord, Grayling, that will move through. Those are going to be elevated up there, kind of similar to what we see in the morning, and those will introduce a hail and damaging wind risk up there. Again, no tornado risk, pretty much north of that M55 corridor, but again, we added probabilities in our maps, which you'll see here in a second, just in case. So as you see, we move into the 6 o'clock, the 7 o'clock hours here. This is also new on our latest HRRR run of the 18Z, is that we actually have storms starting to fire through the capping inversion along that warm front there. Those are going to be the storms to watch. You can see right in the center of your screen there, those cells right around Grand Rapids, Mount Pleasant, south of Big Rapids. Those are the ones that will be launching onto the cold front. Those would move over into the Tri-Cities region and stay on the warm front as it moves into the thumb. And then we have the cold front moving in later in the evening, which a bunch of cells could pop up along that, but more of a linear segment where it'll be pretty much just a damaging wind risk, if anything, for the overnight hours. And those cells, again, will move off into Ontario by around 6 a.m. Saturday morning. So your Saturday will be relatively clear, besides a couple rain showers down here in southern Michigan. So putting that all together, we can kind of take a look at the capping inversion really quick on a skew T. So we'll go ahead and take one right here from Ithaca, Michigan region. Right now, there is a little bit of a warm nose down here at the surface. This entire area here between this dotted dash line and this red line, which is your temperature profile, is your cape. So it's all your instability. There's a lot of that. The bigger the region is there between the dashed line and the red, the more cape is available. If that is clear all the way down to the surface, which is right where the 71 degree marker is, that is all uncapped atmosphere. However, if that red line crosses the dashed line, that is a capping inversion. You can see that very, very tiny capping inversion down there at the surface. But again, if it's not 71, if it's actually closer to like 80 degrees tomorrow in these locations, then that red line will be all the way over to the right, and that dashed line will be further over to the right as well. So that would mean a completely uncapped atmosphere along the warm front, and that could spell trouble for the I-96 corridor. But again, we'll have to watch model runs as they come out overnight, and we also have to kind of watch our atmosphere tomorrow, how it interacts with those storms in the morning, because the storms in the morning could also put a damper on some things as well. So again, all hazards possible tomorrow, only in the afternoon. In the morning, there's a marginal risk for some hail, a little bit of damaging wind risk, but the main show would be after 5 o'clock. So if you have plans tomorrow night around 5 o'clock or later, that is your time to kind of take note. I will say this right now before people ask about a timing map, is we have basically storm mode because there's a capping inversion. So a capping inversion is not bad for storms. If you have a weaker cap, that could make storms more isolated in nature and kind of scattered all over the place. And so With that being said, we could see a bunch of isolated cells just kind of pop up all over the place tomorrow after 5 o'clock. So it'll be hard to kind of pinpoint down a timing for when you're supposed to see your first, perhaps severe thunderstorm tomorrow night. If there's a bunch of different linear segments or a bunch of different little supercells kind of popped up and down along the state. So I'll probably get a timing map out for the morning because that's kind of more cut in stone there, I guess you could say. But the evening risk tomorrow, you should just bet on essentially storms popping up anytime after 5 o'clock. So with that being said, I believe I have covered everything. Tri-Cities is Saginaw Midland based city, by the way. Other than our risk that we issued this afternoon around 3 o'clock. So it's a little different from what the SPC has out. We have the medium risk, which is kind of their equivalent of a slight risk. Anywhere where you see there in yellow, it excludes the thumb for the most part and extends all the way up towards the bridge, essentially. The reason being for that is because of that elevated hail risk. Again, the main risk tomorrow is going to be hail. It's not going to be a tornado threat at all, unless you live along the warm front. Then it could be a little bit higher. And we'll go into these hazards probabilities map by map here. So we'll start with our hail risk. So that's the main one there. Anywhere where you see that yellow zone, that's a 15 to 25% chance that you see a storm that produces a severe hail report. There's also an additional 10% chance for 2-inch hail. That does not add on to the 15 to 25%. It's its own category. So you have a 10% chance of seeing 2-inch hail, and basically a 15 to 24% chance you see just hail in general. So keep that in mind. The wind risk map is basically the same. There's not significant winds all the way up to the border there, or all the way up to the bridge, I should say. But there still is a 15 to 24% chance. The significant winds are kind of confined to south of Clare and south of Ludington. It does include Ludington, but pretty much south of Ludington. And that includes both lines, so the morning line and the evening round of thunderstorms there. And then again, the tornado risk, which is kind of our tertiary risk here, very, very low, a 1 to 3% chance anywhere you see in green. And then along that warm front there in brown, we have a 3 to 5% chance. So not a slam dunk by any means for tornado risk tomorrow, but if anything can break through the cap, then certainly all hazards would be possible along that warm front. So again, the warm front is positioned right now, according to our model runs, to be pretty much along that I-96 corridor, maybe up as far north as US 10. So kind of in the central Michigan, south central Michigan region between Lansing and Mount Pleasant. It's going to be kind of your bullseye if you are if you're looking for like an all hazards risk, essentially. So with that being said, I will go ahead and turn into the comments now. Back it up here to our main severe outlook map and go through the comments. I'm probably missed some super chats, so I do apologize if I did not get to yours. I do see one here from Jacob, back from month number 6 here on YouTube. Keep up the great work, Joel and MSC crew. Thank you, Jacob, and appreciate you. I know you're one of our Discord members there too as well, so thank you for following along. So if you're not, I will say this right now, if you know you're in a risk that is a little bit lower on the map here, let me go ahead and switch it to this screen so it has more of a full screen effect to it. There we go. So now you can see the whole map here. So if you know you're in like the green or the blue, it's basically just lower probabilities. You're still in the zone to see severe tomorrow, but the reason being, especially for the thumb, for those in Macomb County, St. Clair County over there on the edge, in the thumb there, the reason why we kind of cut you guys out is because the storms will be coming through so late in the evening, or overnight I should say, that a lot of the instability is going to be kind of dying off by the time the storms get to you. So it's not going to be as juice of an atmosphere essentially when those storms get to you. So a less of a severe risk and more of just a strong storm risk, I guess you could say. We'll go ahead and switch back to our risk here. Just to give you an idea of how juiced the atmosphere is tomorrow, we will go through the supercell composite indice. So this kind of just measures wind shear, instability, kind of all those ingredients of SLIM mashed together to give you an idea of, if there's any potential for supercells tomorrow or just severe weather in general. And you can see here, here's your bullseye across portions of central and southern Michigan, where you have supercell composites well into the double digits. Really anything over 10 to 15 is sufficient for supercells to form. However, again, that capping inversion, it won't matter. If that capping inversion is in place, then supercells will not pop, and they will not become deeply rooted in the atmosphere. So that moves through, and then we have the cold front that kind of moves through as well. Those supercells really won't form on the cold front, so something to kind of keep in mind there. It's going to be kind of more of a warm front thing, if anything. Again, warm fronts are more volatile than the cold fronts are. And there's your measure of instability tomorrow. So you see those values well above 1,000, so 2,000, even upwards of 2,600 there across portions of Gratiot and Clinton counties, perhaps Montcalm and Ionia counties as well. And that bullseye of kind of the highest instability will move over into Saginaw County, Bay County, and Tuscola County as we get into the 8 o'clock time frame tomorrow night. There's juice in the atmosphere. What flavor? Storm flavored. The reason these forecasts are so tricky is because of the capping inversion. So it's, if you guys saw our post on our page again with that severe weather outlook that we posted at 3 o'clock, I mentioned it's a huge boom or bust sort of forecast where there's a lot hinging on the capping inversion. It's basically, if you take a coin, you toss it in the air. If it lands on heads, the cap breaks and you have everything happen. If it lands on tails, cap stays in place. Basically, nothing happens besides a couple thunderstorms here or there. Maybe a strong hail risk. That's about it. So this is what makes forecasting difficult, is because half the models say cap and half the models say no cap. It's another reason why we have to communicate this to you guys, is because your weather apps, if you guys use weather apps out there, they'll only hinge their data on one model run. Whereas we're sitting here behind the scenes, we have dozens and dozens of models that we can look at and sit and see ourselves which ones are more hinging on the cap and which ones are hinging less on the cap. So we've heard you guys' comments all day saying, "Oh, my app switched to 50% chance of precipitation and mostly sunny skies," for example. And again, that is based on one model run and not the entire charcuterie board, I guess you could say, of model runs. So that is why a human element is needed for this sort of severe weather forecasting. I personally am leaning towards more of a cap right now, just because it's been heavily capped all week, and the HRRR is pretty much the closest thing to being not capped. It is our short range model. It's the one that does best in short range, but we do have to kind of look at some of our other models still. For those who are just tuning in, a capping inversion is basically like a lid in the atmosphere. It prevents surface-based particles from rising, latching onto some moisture and becoming clouds essentially, and essentially formulate thunderstorms. You can still get thunderstorms with a capping inversion, but they'll be what's called elevated storms, and so they'll be forming above the capping inversion, but they're not rooted at the surface essentially. So that's where you get your big hailers, for example. And tomorrow we have some soundings out there that are indicative of some pretty large hail at the very least. Then you also have your STP, which is your tornado parameter, measurement of kind of more of that shear and a bunch of other factors that kind of go into formulating where tornadoes are most likely to happen. So again, kind of the same area between M20 down to I-96 there. And that risk will kind of move over into the Tri-Cities region and the thumb as we get later into the evening. So that's your bullseye. That's why we have on our tornado map a 5% zone that kind of goes only through the central part of the state and doesn't go all the way down to the border, because it's far enough away from that warm front to really kind of latch on and spin up essentially. The reason why we have a level 3 of 6 risk is because all the ingredients that are in place for all hazards. Our maps are strictly probability based, so if you look at it as a glass half full, so right now we have, for example, it's a 15 to 25% chance that you see a storm, which produces a hail risk or a damaging wind risk in this case. Again, glass half full, if you look at the other way, it's a 75 to 85% chance that you see a storm that does not produce a damaging wind or hail risk. So it's essentially a 1 in 4 chance tomorrow that any storm that you do encounter here in the yellow will be severe. So there's a 3 in 4 chance that you will not see a severe storm, even if it does storm at your location. So something to kind of keep in mind. All our maps are probability based. Just because it's yellow and kind of out there in the open does not mean that severe weather is bona fide and it's a 100% chance it's going to happen. So again, all probability based, as you can see here, 15 to 24% chance that'll happen, or if you look at it the other way, 75 to 85% chance. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Yeah, no matter where you live in Michigan, you should be prepared for tomorrow. Make sure you have a weather-ready plan just in case severe weather does happen tomorrow at your location. Yeah, for the people up north that are still picking up from the ice storm, this will not be good for the trees up there for sure, especially if you have gusty winds and some hail. That could definitely break off some more branches for your day on Friday, especially Friday morning. And then, I will say especially Friday night, because Friday morning, that first segment that I showed you on radar is going to be mainly a West Michigan event and points south. So there is your line right there. Sags south towards Detroit. And you have a couple isolated cells that pop up throughout the afternoon that we'll have to watch out for. And then our first action I noticed here on radar is your elevated cells right across the Kalkaska and Gaylord region, even Grayling. There's a couple cells quite potent in nature with some significant helicity there, I would have to say. But again, not a tornado risk there by any means. Too far north, further north than the warm front is. So it's going to be hard to become surface space there. So your wind risk and hail risk for up north really kind of starts after that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time frame. And then everyone else is pretty much 5 o'clock or later. It looks like, as of right now, the capping inversion, if it's going to break, is going to be right around 6 or 7 o'clock. So keep that in mind. 8 o'clock is really kind of when it takes off, and then you have a break, and then the cold front comes through. So again, that's why I said the timing map is going to be very, very difficult come tomorrow morning, essentially. Or for tomorrow evening. $2 super chat from Gas. What time will the second storms hit southwest? So again, that's going to be likely 8 o'clock or later. The further east you are in the state, obviously the later the storm's going to be at night. So you could be looking at closer to 10 o'clock, but as early as probably 7 or 8. Confused how hail can be formed up in the atmosphere and reach the ground with a surface temperature of almost 80 degrees. That's a good question, actually. I will go ahead and kind of show you, see if I can get a sounding that kind of is indicative of perhaps a good hailer. We'll go to this storm up here in the upper, no, that's not a good one. I think I probably have to go where there's going to be a lot of cape, so I'll have to go to surface based. And pick one of these orange areas there. Perfect. So again, it all depends on this red line here. This red line is your change in temperature with your temperature with change in height. So you have at the surface 72 degrees, quickly gets warm where the cap is, and then it dramatically decreases as it goes to the left. Again, your temperature lines here are all these diagonal lines that go from left to right. So you can see your 0 degrees Celsius line is that dashed blue line that my mouse is following right there. So at about 3 kilometers off the surface, you're already below freezing. And then it quickly becomes minus 40, minus 50, minus 60 degrees Celsius when you get up towards the 4 to 6 to 9 kilometer mark there in the atmosphere. So there's a lot of super cooled air that's just kind of floating up there, and it's also very moist. So rain droplets kind of just freeze on each other, tumble around in the atmosphere, and then because this entire profile is fairly moist, it stays together all the way down. There's very little in the way of melting until it gets to about that 3 kilometers off the ground level there in the atmosphere. So all that hail basically forms way up high in the atmosphere and falls down. Looking at some of your models, is it my imagination that the lakeshore in Michigan in Muskegon, destroys any severe weather chances for Muskegon. Because the lake waters are so cold right now, I would say I would lean towards yes. It'll be hard to get severe weather immediately along the lake shore, but as soon as those storms jump off the lake onto the land, it's going to tap in a lot of that instability out there and definitely get surface based if there is a lack of a cap. Trisha with a $4.99 super chat. Love winter, but I'm tired of the cold. Same here. It'll be nice tomorrow. Nevertheless, out there, temperatures in the 70s and 80s. If you're north of the warm front, it's going to be in the 60s. So for those who are just tuning in, we have 2 lines of storms that we're expecting tomorrow, one in the morning and one in the evening. So you have around 6 o'clock, closer to 10 o'clock for the west or the east side of the state. You have a couple rogue cells that might pop up out there as well between our lines that aren't expected to be severe, but we'll closely monitor them. There is a chance that we could be live for well over 12 hours total within the next 36 hours here at MSC. So again, we'll cover you guys beginning to end. If you haven't followed the page already, we cover every single severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning in the state, no matter what, no matter when, no matter the time of year, essentially. So I'll be here covering for you guys. We have the morning cells there, again, ending around 10. And then you start to see the capping inversion start to break around 5, but primarily after 6 and 7 o'clock. You also have a lot of training showers up there in northern Michigan that'll be happening well before 5 o'clock as well. So it's kind of an all over the place sort of day tomorrow, and it's also going to be hard to make an actual timing map for that evening stuff. But for the morning stuff, expect between 5 to 10 a.m. That'll be kind of impacting your morning commute there. Red Doja with a $20 super chat saying, hello everyone. Just heard the weatherman on TV say sunshine. Could you please explain what that is? What am I missing? I would imagine you're probably talking about the capping inversion again tomorrow. If there's a capping inversion out there, it's going to keep things relatively dry. Looking at our cloud cover for tomorrow, there's actually not a whole lot of sun happening out there besides maybe down there along the state line. A lot of our instability tomorrow is going to just be warm air advection based, so we don't necessarily need the sun. However, the sun will aid better in a cap in breaking that cap. So we'll have plenty of warm air out there tomorrow for instability to build, but if you really want to see that capping inversion break, you're going to need some more of that sun, essentially. And it stays cloudy through pretty much the rest of your Saturday as well. Yeah, there's a chance. This cap has a 50-50 shot of breaking versus not breaking, which is why it makes forecasting events like this, where all hazards are possible, very, very tricky and sometimes deceitful. Crystal, where are you hearing the thunder at? I see there's a hail report up here in Marquette. It's probably, is it northern Michigan? There's not a whole lot out there in the state right now that I'm seeing. There's some light showers in southwest Michigan, and then a couple storms up there in the UP right now, not severe. All that stuff in Wisconsin, Chicago fizzles out. Again, that's today's stuff. What you see here on radar, that's going to fizzle out because that is, again, today's stuff. And then you have it kind of reform as it moves into West Michigan there. And then this is a lot of clear air down here. So because there's a lot of clear air, a lot of warm air advection kind of unimpeded coming up from Indiana and points south, you'll have a lot of instability form in the region. And that'll allow the juice to refire these storms south of the warm front, essentially. So you can see those storms refire there along the cold front. The main thing we're going to be watching is not the cold front, but that actual warm front. So these storms right in here, it doesn't look menacing on radar per se, but that is the cluster that's going to be tapping into the most, or I should say the highest levels of like instability and all those other ingredients that I mentioned. So it's a very tricky sort of setup. So it's currently 6:36 here. Again, my plans for tonight, we'll have probably a timing map out for the morning stuff later this evening. I got to make sure that some of the streaming software here is ready for tomorrow. And other than that, we might do a watch party tonight for those who are members here on YouTube. Keep that in mind. It would probably be 1:30 start. But with morning showers moving through, I do want to try and get some sleep tonight before I'm going to be up pretty much all day tomorrow. So we'll probably do a very, very quick or brief watch party tonight. Again, for those who are new here, watch parties, no information really kind of being withheld there. It's just where we can just kind of gather and just talk about the SBC outlook as it comes out and just kind of go over, look at the models, the latest model runs that come out too. As the information is released, we'll put it on our page for those who are not members, essentially. I know it was requested by some people here that are members on our YouTube channel, so we'll go ahead and probably schedule that for around 1:30. I would imagine they'd probably keep it slight risk from the SBC at least, given that they already kind of reduced it as it is. But a slight risk is fine given the nature of tomorrow, in my opinion. We have a lot of our chaser partners in chat here. Welcome in, guys. Let us know if you're chasing tomorrow. We'll definitely need the cams out there. Yeah. A good slogan to remember is prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, essentially. So you always want to kind of make sure your severe weather plan is in place. Have your important documents on standby. Make sure you take them down with you to your safe location. If you live in like a trailer, for example, a place that's not great shelter, making sure you have a place to go on severe weather days is highly recommended, because again, trailers do not fare well in severe weather, especially in tornadoes, especially even the weaker ones. So having a severe weather plan ready to enact, especially when you see the storms starting to form in Michigan, it's something to kind of keep in mind. So another thing with these storms tomorrow, I mentioned it in one of our posts earlier in the week, is because of how kind of sharp that cap might break off, we could see storms that do develop on that warm front go severe in the matter of 5 to 15 minutes time. So you kind of want to be watching the radar behind the scenes. If we're not live, for example, making sure you have a weather radar app on your phone is also a great way to kind of keep yourself in the loop. But we could see these storms go severe as quick as 5 to 15 minutes, especially in the evening beyond 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Again, given that capping inversion is very, very weak, I guess you could say, off the HRRR at least. AF becoming an EF0 member here on YouTube. Thank you, AF. Hope to see you tonight at our watch party. Tornadoes in Metro Detroit, Southeast Michigan for tomorrow, low risk. You can see there the STP is pretty low for Southeast Michigan. If we go over to our in-house forecast map, you can see right on the edge of that, less than 1 to a 1 to 3% chance for Metro Detroit. Again, the highest tornado risk is going to be confined to that warm front. Storm, how fast are the storms going to move? That's also a good question. So storm motion is right down here. Bunkers right, bunkers left. So that's around 45 to 50 knots. So these storms could be hauling pretty quickly, around 50 to maybe even 55 miles per hour at times. So it'd be hard to keep up and chase, especially if the storm motion is rather off to the east northeast or the northeast. Yeah, especially the northeast. So for those who are asking about the cap is it's basically a 50-50 shot this time. All week the models have been leaning more towards the cap staying in place, but as of recently, our short range models are the ones that are starting to break that cap a little bit. The most outlandish model that we've had all week has been the NAM. It's been very much on the cool side of things. Uh, it looks like it is keeping the caps very, very strongly in place through tomorrow as well. So if we switch it over to our reflectivity, I bet there's going to be basically no storms, but we'll see for Friday evening. Yeah, the NAM has absolutely no storms forming except for maybe along the cold front. So that just goes to show you how back and forth these models have been and how much disagreement there are between them all. I bet you if I look at the temperature here, it's going to be in the 60s tomorrow on this, and it's just not looking probable. Yeah, widespread 60-degree temperatures across lower Michigan, when the forecast is supposed to be in the 70s to perhaps even 80. So we've been throwing out the NAM all week. It's been very much on the colder side of things, which would be an even stronger cap. So if you are not a fan of severe weather, you are rooting for the NAM solution to be absolutely correct. Yes, cap in place means weaker storms. Yeah, if we get sun tomorrow, it'll definitely help in getting that cap to break a lot quicker. So we definitely have to watch areas that might be getting close to 80, 85 degrees in some spots. So if you haven't already, if you've been tuning in for a while, make sure to hit that like button. For those who are wondering where we'll be live tomorrow for our severe weather coverage, it's basically the same platforms that we're on here tonight. So YouTube, Facebook are our top options. If you want the shortest stream delay, so if time is of essence of you, we highly recommend trying out Twitch TV. Our username is MIStormchasers. It has about a 5-second delay compared to our YouTube and Facebook streams, which have about a 15 to 30-second delay. Then alternately, you can also watch on X there, just in case you don't have any of the other platforms we mentioned. So 4 different platforms you can follow us on for our live streaming coverage tomorrow. So right now, I would have to say that there'll be a nice break between 10 and 4 for most of southern and central Michigan. We could see a rogue shower or thunderstorm pop up in between that time, obviously, but we're not expecting any of those storms between 10 and 4 o'clock to really be anywhere towards severe. Fingers crossed that they aren't, because I want to get a little bit of a nap in, especially if tomorrow night is looking to be a long night. Not saying that it will be, but with me on operations here, it'll be a long night. We've had some long streams before. For those who've been here a long time, we've seen 10-hour streams at some point. So that's how dedicated we are to helping you guys out. I faced it off the screen because I want to go and quickly mention shout out to our premier sponsor of the day, Floor Coverings International, Michiana. Number on your screen, 574-850-9417. What we do here at Michigan Storm Chasers is not free, so supporting us via sponsors, or if you would like to become a channel member, that is totally optional to do, but not required. So we do thank our sponsors for keeping operations going here at Michigan Storm Chasers. Without them, we would not be able to do what we do. So thank you, Floor Coverings International, Michiana, for our premier sponsor of the day. We'll also tab through all of our other sponsors here. We have about a dozen of them. We have Storm Guard, roofing and construction out of Southeast Michigan. Pro Powder, just powder coating needs in Southwest Michigan. McKay's Roofing and Siding. Sanilac County, St. Clair County area. McKay Tree Specialists, based out of Southeast Michigan as well. Lifestyle Exteriors, based out of Central Michigan, from Lansing to Traverse City there, for all your roofing and construction needs. Kuiper Tree Care, West Michigan residents who are tuning in tonight, that is your go-to for all things tree-related. Katz Roofing and Siding, also kind of based out of the Lansing area, more towards Battle Creek and Potterville. Gull Lake Tree Pro, based out of Gull Lake and Kalamazoo. FBI Buildings, all your barn dominium needs, call FBI Buildings. Henkel's Tree Service, based out of Southern Michigan. On Top Roofing, based out of Livingston County. And last but not least, our Skycam network, brought to you by Guardian Technologies. We have 5 different Skycams out there across the state, with dozens more coming throughout the summer and into 2026. So we'll have a bunch of different Skycams out there to look at as severe weather rolls in throughout many days this summer. So my camera does not focus there. Perfect. I'm a foggy figure. So thank you again, sponsors. Again, all those numbers can be found. If you go back, pause the stream. If you want to take a snapshot of them, you can. They're also scrolling at the top of your screen up there above the tab. So take a couple more questions here, and then we'll call it for a briefing tonight. And if you're a member here on YouTube, we'll see you perhaps later tonight for the watch party around 1:30 a.m. Ideally is when we're going to start it. Traverse City, you guys are expecting elevated storms. Nothing really in the way of a tornado risk, but more of a hail risk. Big Rapids is in that kind of target zone there along the warm front, so definitely want to be on watch out in Big Rapids. Switch back to your general risk map. So if you're anywhere in this yellow region, you definitely want to be on the highest alert tomorrow for primarily a damaging hail risk. That's going to be your number 1 threat tomorrow. A close second will be that damaging wind risk, and then your tertiary threat will be the tornado risk. So all hazards possible, but number 1 and number 2 are going to be hail and damaging wind. I need something. The camera's not focusing. I'm sorry, everybody. This map is for both rounds of severe weather, by the way. So this includes tomorrow morning stuff. So we combined tomorrow morning stuff with tomorrow evening stuff. So we just made one big map, essentially. We did have them separate earlier in the week, but they are now one big map, just to kind of keep things simple. Again, they're both happening on Friday, so just kind of keep an eye out for your entire day on Friday, especially in early morning and late evening. Appreciate all you guys that are subscribing on YouTube. Thank you guys very much. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Yeah, no more questions. So again, slight risk possible tomorrow based off of the Storm Prediction Center. Ours is kind of the same there, a little bit more of an extension to the north and a tad bit more further to the east with our slight risk. It's the same thing as a medium risk for primarily a damaging wind and a hail risk. Storms will fire between 5 and 10 o'clock, primarily for West Michigan and Southern Michigan. And then as we get into the evening, we have round 2 that kind of forms along that warm front and perhaps further north, where there will be some elevated storms up there in Northern Michigan around 3 to 5 o'clock and later. And then after 5 o'clock for portions of Central and Southern Michigan along that warm front, which is these storms right here. And then the cold front will swing in overnight beyond midnight here across the state. And that leads to a little bit colder temperatures on Saturday and no severe risk on Saturday. So that is your kind of recap there. If you guys have missed anything, you can go back and watch the archived footage of this live briefing. One of the reasons why we encourage you guys to subscribe on YouTube, again, free to do, is you can go back and watch the live streams from previous briefings, previous storms at your own disposal. So this will be available as soon as we're done here for you guys to rewind. So, yeah, Tanji, if the cap breaks, these storms will be explosive tomorrow, essentially. So you are correct. See, put a couple more last comments in here talking about CBS News tonight. Yeah, we have a segment. I believe Chandler and Caleb got to do an interview on CBS out of Detroit or Eastern Michigan or something for what we did up in Northern Michigan the past 2 weekends, handing out supplies and stuff like that. So if you live in the Detroit region, feel free to check that out. That interview will be on CBS sometime after 11 o'clock tonight. So keep that in mind. Other than that, we will catch you guys later. Hope you guys have a good night. Stay safe out there tomorrow morning if you're driving into work early. Have to encounter some of those storms. If we don't see you again later tonight with our members-only watch party, we'll probably see you again tomorrow during our live severe weather coverage. Again, I'm Chief Meteorologist Joel Fritzma. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Chief Met Joel Fritzma, or Meteorologist Joel Fritzma on Facebook. And we will see you guys here tomorrow morning, most likely, and then we might do a briefing tomorrow afternoon as well, depending on how I'm feeling. Staying awake, I guess you could say. But I'll see you guys at some point tomorrow, no matter what's going on. So have a good night, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon here, Michigan Storm Chasers. Stay safe, everyone.